The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the harbour cafe, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. Maya wiped down the corner table for the third time, her movements slow and deliberate. She had learned over the past 8 months of working here that keeping her hands busy helped quiet the noise in her mind. She was 24 years old, though some days she felt decades older. Her black hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail, and her uniform, a simple white blouse and black skirt, was pressed and spotless. She took pride in her appearance, even when pride was all she had left. The cafe wasn't particularly fancy, but it wasn't cheap either. It sat in the business district of the city, catering to professionals who came for the artisan coffee and the quiet ambience. Maya had been grateful when they hired her 6 months pregnant. No questions asked beyond the standard interview. The manager, Mrs. Chen, was a woman who believed in second chances. Now, at 2 months postpartum, Maya was back on her feet, working double shifts whenever she could. Her daughter, Lily, stayed with her mother during the day, arrangement that filled Maya with both gratitude and guilt in equal measure. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya looked up from her table. 3 men in expensive suits walked in, their laughter loud and confident. She recognized the type immediately. Successful, self-assured, accustomed to being served. They chose a table near the window, and Maya approached with menus and a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to the Harbour Cafe." The first 2 men barely glanced at her, already deep in conversation about stock portfolios and merger deals. But the third man, the one sitting in the center, looked up, and Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. She knew him, not personally, but she knew who he was. Raymond Chen. She'd seen his face in the business section of newspapers, in the society pages, the youngest executive vice president in his father's real estate empire. 28 years old and worth more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. But more than that, much more than that, she knew his face because it was the same face that haunted someone else's memories. Someone whose story had become intertwined with Maya's own, in ways neither of them could have predicted. Raymond didn't recognize her. Of course, why would he? To men like him, waitresses were part of the furniture. "Coffee," he said without preamble. "Black. And make sure it's hot this time. Last week, someone served me lukewarm coffee here." He didn't look at her as he spoke, his attention already back on his phone. Maya nodded silently and turned away. As she walked to the coffee station, her hand trembled slightly. She steadied it against the counter, taking a slow breath. She had learned something important over the past 2 years. Humiliation is often quietest when it's most complete. There were no raised voices here, no dramatic confrontations, just the casual dismissal, the assumption that her time and effort were worth less because of the uniform she wore. Maya prepared the coffee with care, ensuring the temperature was exactly right. When she returned to the table, Raymond was laughing at something on his colleague's phone. She placed the cup before him gently. "Your coffee, sir." He took a sip without acknowledging her, then made a face. "This is too hot. I can't drink this." He pushed the cup toward the edge of the table, and Maya had to catch it quickly before it spilled. "Bring me another one. And this time use your brain." One of his companions chuckled. "Raymond, take it easy on the girl. I'm paying for a service," Raymond replied coolly. "I expect competence. Is that too much to ask?" Malcolm felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her expression neutral. "I apologize, sir. I'll bring you another one right away." She returned to the coffee station, her hands steadier now. Anger, she had discovered, could sometimes be more stabilizing than fear. She prepared a fresh cup, testing the temperature herself before bringing it back. This time, Raymond took a sip and said nothing. In the vocabulary of men like him, silence was the closest thing to approval. Maya retreated to the service station, where her co-worker, Jenny, was sorting silverware. "You okay?" Jenny whispered. "That guy's being a real piece of work." "Man, fine," Maya said quietly. And she was. She'd endured worse than a rude customer. Much worse. As the afternoon wore on, Raymond and his colleagues ordered lunch. Maya served them efficiently, anticipating their needs, refilling water glasses before they were asked, clearing plates promptly. She was good at her job, better than they would ever notice. At one point, Raymond snapped his fingers to get her attention. Maya felt something cold settle in her chest at the gesture, but she approached with the same professional composure. "Yes, sir. This steak is overcooked. I ordered medium rare." Maya glanced at the plate. The steak looked perfectly medium rare to her trained eye. But she knew better than to argue. "I'll have the kitchen prepare you a new one right away, sir." "No charge." "Of course no charge," Raymond said, his tone implying that this should have been obvious. "And next time, pay attention to what you're doing. Details matter."
"Yes, sir."
As she walked away with the plate, she heard one of his colleagues say something in a low voice, followed by laughter. Maya didn't need to hear the words to know they were about her. In the kitchen, she showed the plate to Carlos, the head chef. He examined the steak and shook his head. "This is perfect, he's just flexing." "I know," Maya said quietly. "Can you make him another one anyway?" Carlos sighed but nodded. "For you, Maya, not for him." While she waited for the new steak, Maya allowed herself a moment to lean against the cool wall of the kitchen, closing her eyes. She thought about Lily, about her daughter's small, perfect face. Everything she endured here was for that face. And she thought about Sarah. Sarah Chen, though she'd gone back to her maiden name, Sarah Park, after everything that happened. Maya had met her 4 months ago at a community support group for single mothers. They'd bonded over late-night bottles and the particular exhaustion that comes from raising an infant alone. Sarah's story had emerged slowly, over many cups of tea and countless hours of shared vulnerability. And when Maya finally heard it in full, she'd been struck by the cruelty of coincidence. Or perhaps it wasn't coincidence at all. Perhaps the world was simply smaller than people like to believe. The new steak was ready. Maya carried it out to Raymond's table, with the same calm efficiency she'd maintained all afternoon. "Your steak, sir." This time Raymond cut into it, chewed thoughtfully, and gave a slight nod. "Better." "No thank you." No acknowledgement of the effort. Just better. Maya returned to her station and continued her work. The afternoon stretched into early evening, and finally, Raymond and his colleagues requested their check. Maya calculated the total carefully, $32 for the three of them, and presented it in a leather folder. Raymond pulled out a black credit card without looking at the total and handed it to her. When Maya returned with the receipt, he signed it quickly, stood up and walked toward the door with his companions. Maya looked down at the receipt. He'd left a $3 tip on a $37 bill. Less than 1%. She folded the receipt carefully and placed it in her apron pocket. Then she cleared the table, wiping away the evidence of their presence. Jenny came up beside her. "What did they leave you?" $3. Jenny's eyes widened. "That's insulting. You should report him to—" "It's fine," Maya interrupted gently. "Really, I'm fine." But as she carried the dirty dishes to the kitchen, Maya found herself thinking again about Sarah's story, about how wealth could transform people, could hollow them out until all that remained was the shell of who they'd once been. Sarah had been 19 when she met Raymond Chen. Not the Raymond who wore $1,000 suits and treated service workers like furniture, but a different Raymond, or perhaps the same Raymond before he learned to hide his humanity beneath layers of privilege. It had been 6 years ago, during Raymond's brief rebellion against his father's plans. He'd told his family he wanted to take a year off before joining the company. Wanted to find himself, or some similar cliché that wealthy young men indulge in when they temporarily forget their advantages. He'd taken a job teaching English at a small community center in one of the city's poorer neighborhoods. The pay was terrible, but that was part of the point. He was slumming it, playing at poverty while knowing his father's credit card was always in his wallet. If things got too uncomfortable. Sarah had been a student there. She'd dropped out of high school at 16 to work full-time when her father died suddenly, leaving her mother with debts and a younger brother to support. But she was determined to get her GED, to build something better for herself. Raymond had noticed her immediately. Her quiet intelligence, her fierce determination, the way she stayed late after class to ask questions. And Sarah, for her part, had been drawn to his kindness, his patience, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her dreams. They'd started dating after 3 months. Sarah had been cautious at first, aware of the vast gulf between their worlds. Raymond came from money, he'd admitted that much, though he downplayed the extent of his family's wealth. But he'd seemed different from what she imagined. Rich people to be. He was humble. Or so she thought. He listened. He cared. For a year they built something real together. Raymond would come to the tiny apartment Sarah shared with her mother and brother, eating dinner at their cramped kitchen table, helping her younger brother with homework. Sarah's mother had been wary at first, but even she had warmed to Raymond's charm and apparent sincerity. Sarah had fallen deeply, completely, in love. And Raymond had seemed to love her too. Then his year was up. His father demanded he return to the company, start his training, take his place in the family empire. Raymond had resisted at first, or so he told Sarah. He wanted to stay, wanted to keep teaching, keep building their relationship, but the pressure from his family was immense. His father threatened to cut him off completely. His mother wept and pleaded. His older brother called him selfish and irresponsible. Raymond told Sarah they'd find a way to make it work. He'd join the company, yes, but nothing would change between them. He loved her. That was what mattered. Sarah had believed him because she needed to believe him, because the alternative was too painful to consider. For 6 months they tried. Raymond worked long hours at his father's company, learning the business from the ground up. Sarah continued working and studying, now dreaming of a future where she could stand beside Raymond as an equal, educated, and capable. But slowly, inevitably, things began to change. Raymond's family had noticed the relationship. Of course, at first they'd assumed it was a passing phase, another symptom of their son's temporary rebellion. But when it became clear that Raymond was serious about Sarah, their tolerance evaporated. Raymond's mother had been the most direct. She'd invited Sarah to lunch, just the two of them at an expensive restaurant. Sarah could never have afforded on her own. Over delicate salads and wine. Sarah didn't drink. Raymond's mother had explained the situation with the kind of gentle cruelty only wealthy women seem to master. "You seem like a lovely girl, Sarah, truly. And I can see why Raymond is fond of you. But you must understand our family has certain expectations. Raymond's future wife will need to move in particular circles, attend certain events, represent our family's interests in the community. These things require specific training, specific background. I'm sure you understand." Sarah had sat very still, her hands folded in her lap, feeling her dreams crumble into dust. "Raymond loves me," she'd said quietly. Raymond's mother had smiled, a smile full of pity. "Raymond is 23 years old. He doesn't yet understand the difference between love and infatuation, but he will. In time, he'll see that we only want what's best for him." "I want what's best for him too," Sarah had insisted. "Then, let him go, dear. If you truly love him, you'll let him fulfill his destiny, without the burden of an unsuitable attachment." Sarah had left that lunch with her stomach churning and her heart breaking. She'd told Raymond about the conversation that evening, hoping he would rage against his mother's cruelty, would stand up for their relationship, would choose her. Instead, Raymond had gone quiet. He'd held her hand and said he loved her, but his voice had lacked conviction. The seed of doubt had been planted. Over the following months, Raymond's calls became less frequent. He was busy, he said, important meetings, family obligations. He still loved her, he was always careful to say that, but Sarah could feel him slipping away. Then came the real blow. One evening, 8 months into his work at the company, Raymond had taken Sarah to a quiet cafe. His hands had trembled slightly as he held hers across the table. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." She'd known in that moment what was coming. She'd felt it in her bones. "My father has arranged a marriage for me to Jennifer Lou. Her family owns the second largest construction company in the region. It's a business alliance. It would be good for the company, good for both families." Sarah had stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "A marriage? Raymond, this isn't the 19th century. You can't just—" "I know," he'd interrupted. "I know it sounds crazy, but in our world, these things still matter. My father has made it clear that if I don't do this, I'll lose everything. The company, my trust fund, my place in the family. I'll be cut off completely." "But you said you loved me," Sarah had whispered, tears starting to fall. "I do love you. That's why this is so hard. But Sarah, you have to understand, without my family's support, what can I offer you? I'd have nothing. We'd have nothing. Is that what you want? To watch me struggle and fail? To drag you down with me?" "We'd have each other," Sarah had said. But even as the words left her mouth, she'd heard how naive they sounded. Raymond had pulled his hands away. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. But I can't throw away everything my family has built. I can't disappoint them like that. They've given me everything, and I've given you nothing," Sarah had finished bitterly. "Is that it?" "That's not what I meant." "Yes, it is." Sarah had stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're choosing money and status over us, over me. Just say it." Raymond had looked up at her, and in his eyes, Sarah had seen something that hurt more than the breakup itself. Relief. Relief that she was making this easy for him, that she was letting him play the victim forced into a difficult choice, rather than the coward who couldn't stand up to his family. "I'm sorry," he'd said again. Sarah had walked out of that cafe and hadn't looked back. But that wasn't the end of the story. That wasn't even the worst part. 2 weeks after their breakup, Sarah had discovered she was pregnant. She'd sat on the bathroom floor of her small apartment, staring at the positive pregnancy test, and felt the world tilt on its axis. She was 20 years old, working 2 jobs, barely making enough to support herself, and now she was carrying the child of a man who'd chosen wealth over love. She'd called Raymond the next day, her hands shaking as she pressed his number. He'd answered on the 4th ring, his voice distant and professional. "Sarah, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Raymond, I need to see you. It's important." There'd been a long pause. "Sarah, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm trying to move forward with Jennifer." "I'm pregnant, Raymond." Silence. A silence so complete that Sarah had checked her phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Finally, "Are you sure it's mine?" Those words had hit Sarah like a physical blow. After everything they'd shared, after a year of love and intimacy and trust, he could ask her that question. "Yes," she'd said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I'm sure it's yours. Raymond, I don't know what to do. I don't have money for any of this. I need—" "How much?" Raymond had interrupted. His voice was cold now, businesslike. "How much do you need?" Sarah had felt something inside her shatter completely. "This isn't about money. This is about our child, our baby. Don't you want—" "I'll send you $20,000, Raymond had said. "That should be more than enough to take care of whatever you decide to do. But Sarah, I can't be involved in this. My engagement to Jennifer was just announced. Do you understand what it would do to both families if this got out? I have responsibilities." "What about your responsibility to our child?" Sarah had demanded, crying now.
"I'm offering you money. Generous money."
"That's the best I can do. If you truly care about this baby, you'll use that money to give it a good life somewhere far away from here. Start over somewhere new. You want me to just disappear?" "I want you to be realistic," Raymond had said. "You can't raise a child on your own in this city. The money I'm offering is more than you'd make in 3 years at your current jobs. Take it. Build a life somewhere else. Give the baby opportunities, and never tell them about their father. That would be best for everyone involved, including the child." Sarah had hung up on him then, her whole body shaking with rage and grief. The $20,000 had appeared in her bank account, 2 days later, transferred from a corporate account, not even from Raymond's personal account. Just another business expense, another problem solved with money. Sarah had stared at that number on her screen for hours, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. She could keep the money and disappear, just as Raymond wanted. Or she could refuse it, reject his attempt to buy her silence, and struggle to raise a child in poverty. In the end, she'd kept the money, not because she forgave Raymond or accepted his terms, but because she was practical enough to know that pride wouldn't feed a baby. She'd used part of it to move to a different neighborhood, enrolled in online courses to finish her GED, and saved the rest for when the baby came. But she'd never contacted Raymond again. And he, true to his character, had never reached out to her. He'd moved forward with his engagement to Jennifer Lou, married her in a ceremony that was covered in the society pages, and continued his climb up the corporate ladder. And Sarah had given birth to a son alone, her mother holding her hand in the delivery room, and named him Daniel. She'd looked into her baby's eyes and vowed that he would never feel ashamed of where he came from, never feel like he was worth less because of his circumstances. Maya had heard this entire story over the course of many late nights and early mornings, shared in fragments between diaper changes and bottles. She'd held Sarah while she cried, had validated her anger, had assured her that none of it was her fault. And now, months later, Maya found herself serving Raymond Chen coffee and enduring his casual cruelty, seeing firsthand the man Sarah's Raymond had become, or perhaps had always been. The irony wasn't lost on Maya. Here was this wealthy, arrogant man, humiliating a waitress he didn't know, never suspecting that this waitress knew his deepest secret, his greatest shame. But Maya didn't tell him. She simply did her job, maintained her dignity, and went home at the end of her shift. That evening, after picking up Lily from her mother's apartment, Maya met Sarah at their usual coffee shop, a cheap place nothing like the Harbor Cafe, where they could afford to sit for hours without judgment. "You'll never guess who came into the cafe today," Maya said, bouncing Lily gently on her knee. Sarah looked up from making faces at Daniel, who was giggling in his stroller. Who? Raymond Chen. Sarah's expression froze. Raymond? Maya nodded. He was there with some colleagues. Business lunch. He was. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He was exactly as you described. Rude. Dismissive. Treated me like I was invisible. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her hand resting on Daniel's head. Did he recognize you? No. Why would he? We've never met. And even if he saw us together somewhere, I'm just another poor single mom. We all look the same to people like him. What did he do? Sarah asked softly. Maya told her about the coffee, the steak, the casual humiliations. As she spoke, she watched Sarah's face, saw the old pain flickering there alongside something else. Something that looked almost like vindication. He has no idea, does he? Sarah said when Maya finished. No idea that his son exists, that Daniel is growing up happy and loved despite having a father who abandoned him for money. No, Maya agreed. He has no idea. They sat in silence for a moment, watching their children. Lily had fallen asleep against Maya's chest, and Daniel was fighting sleep, his little fists rubbing at his eyes. You know what the strangest part is? Sarah said finally. I used to imagine scenarios where Raymond would find out about Daniel and regret everything, where he'd come back and beg for forgiveness. I used to fantasize about him realizing what he'd lost. And now? Sarah looked down at her son with a soft smile. Now I'm grateful he stayed away. Daniel doesn't need a father who values money over people. He doesn't need a man who can throw away love like it's nothing. We're better off without him. Maya felt a surge of admiration for her friend. You're stronger than I would be in your position. You're strong too, Sarah said. Meeting Maya's eyes, look at what you've survived. Look at your beautiful daughter. We're both stronger than we ever thought we could be. It was true. Maya's story wasn't so different from Sarah's, though the details varied. She'd been 22 in love with a man who'd promised her the world, only to disappear when that world included a baby. No wealthy family, no arranged marriage, just a simple coward who chose freedom over responsibility. But unlike Sarah, Maya hadn't received $20,000 or any money at all. She'd been truly on her own, working through her pregnancy, giving birth with only her mother by her side, and then fighting to build a life for herself and Lily. The difference was that Maya had never loved her ex the way Sarah had loved Raymond. Maya's relationship had been passionate, but ultimately shallow. Sarah's had been deep and real, which somehow made Raymond's betrayal even worse. I've been thinking, Sarah said slowly, about what success really means. When Raymond left me, I thought he was choosing success over love. I thought he was going to win while I lost. And now I look at Daniel, and I look at my life, and I realize that I've already won. I have a son who will grow up knowing he's loved unconditionally. I have friends who've supported me through everything. I'm finishing my degree online. I'm building something real. She paused, then continued. Raymond has money and status, but what does he have that matters? A loveless marriage arranged for business reasons. A son he doesn't know exists. A life built on abandoning anyone who can't immediately benefit him. Is that success? Maya thought about the man she'd served that afternoon, snapping his fingers at her, pushing away his coffee, leaving a $3 tip. No, she said quietly. That's not success. That's just wealth. And they're not the same thing. 6 months passed. Maya continued working at the Harbor Cafe, saving every dollar she could. She'd enrolled in night classes at the community college, determined to build a better future for herself and Lily. It was exhausting, juggling work and school and motherhood, but she'd learned that she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. Sarah had made similar progress. She'd completed her GED and started a small home-based business designing websites for local companies. It wasn't making her rich, but it was flexible and allowed her to stay home with Daniel. They celebrated their small victories together. Maya's first AI on a college paper, Sarah's first client who paid her what she was actually worth. Daniel's first steps, Lily's first word. These moments felt more valuable than any amount of money. One Saturday afternoon, Maya had just finished her shift and was walking to her car when she noticed a man standing in the parking lot, looking lost. It took her a moment to recognize him. Raymond Chen. He was alone this time. No colleagues, no expensive suit. He wore jeans and a casual button-down shirt, and he looked diminished somehow, less sure of himself. He didn't notice Maya at first. He was staring at his phone with a frown, Then looking around as if searching for something. Maya could have kept walking. Should have kept walking. But something made her stop. "Excuse me," she said. "Can I help you with something?" Raymond looked up, and there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Not because he knew who she was, but because he recognized her uniform, recognized her as the waitress from months ago. "Oh, yes. I'm waiting for someone, but I think I'm at the wrong location. Do you know if there's another harbor cafe in the city?" "No, sir. This is the only location." He nodded, looking frustrated. Then he seemed to really look at her for the first time. "You work here, don't you? I think I've seen you before." "Yes, sir. I'm a waitress here." Something in his expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry if I was rude to you before. I've been told I can be difficult. It's nothing personal." Maya felt a strange mix of emotions. Here was this man who'd caused Sarah so much pain, who'd treated her with such casual cruelty, now apologizing not because he genuinely understood what he'd done wrong, but because it was the socially appropriate thing to say. "It's all right, sir," she said neutrally. Raymond hesitated, then said, "Can I ask you something? You work here, you go to school. I saw textbooks in your car last time. You must be juggling a lot. What drives you to work so hard?" It was such an absurd question, coming from someone who'd never had to struggle, that Maya almost laughed. But there was something genuine in his face, some flicker of real curiosity. "My daughter," Maya said simply. "I want her to have opportunities I didn't have. I want her to grow up knowing that hard work and character matter more than money or status." Raymond nodded slowly. That's admirable. It's just being a parent," Maya replied. There was a long pause. Then Raymond said, "I got married 3 years ago, to a woman my family chose for business reasons. We don't have children. She doesn't want them. And honestly, neither do I. Too much responsibility, she says. Too much disruption to our lifestyle." Maya didn't know what to say to that. She thought about Sarah at home with Daniel. Thought about the way Sarah's face lit up every time her son learned something new, every time he reached for her with his small, trusting hands. "That must be difficult," she said finally, though she wasn't entirely sure what she meant. Raymond shrugged. "It's fine. We have a good life. Comfortable. Successful." But his voice lacked conviction. His phone buzzed then, and he glanced at it. "My mistake. Wrong day entirely. I should go." "Take care, sir," Maya said. As he walked to his car, Maya found herself feeling something unexpected. Not anger or contempt, but pity. Raymond Chen had everything money could buy, but he was living a half-life, disconnected from anything real. That evening, Maya told Sarah about the encounter. They were at Sarah's small apartment, watching their children play together on the floor. "He apologized to you," Sarah said, surprised, in his way. "But Sarah," he looked empty, like there was nothing behind his eyes. "He told me he got married but doesn't want children because they're too much disruption." Sarah was quiet, watching Daniel try to stack blocks. "He doesn't know what he's missing," she said softly. "No," Maya agreed. "He doesn't." Another year passed. Maya graduated from community college with her associate degree and got a promotion at the cafe assistant manager, with better pay and benefits. She still worked hard, but things were getting easier. She could breathe a little. Sarah's web design business had grown beyond her expectations. She'd hired 2 other single mothers to help with the workload, paying them fairly and offering flexible hours. She was building something that mattered, not just a business, but a community. Their children were growing up together, Daniel and Lily, more like cousins than friends. Sarah had met someone new, a kind, steady man named Marcus, who worked as a teacher and loved Daniel as if he were his own son. They were taking things slowly, but Sarah was happy in a way Maya had never seen before. One day, Sarah received a message from an old friend from the community center where she'd met Raymond. The friend had sent her a link to a news article. Chen Enterprises executive indicted for fraud. Sarah read the article with growing disbelief. Raymond's father had been arrested for financial fraud, embezzlement and tax evasion. The family empire was crumbling. Assets were being seized. The scandal was enormous. And Raymond, as executive vice president, was under investigation as well. Sarah showed the article to Maya when they met later that week. "All that money," Maya said, shaking her head. "All that wealth and status he chose over you and Daniel. And it was built on lies." "I don't feel happy about this," Sarah said slowly. "I'm not glad he's suffering. I'm just struck by the irony, I guess. He thought money and family legacy were everything. He sacrificed love for it, and now even that's gone. What will you do? Maya asked. Will you reach out to him? Tell him about Daniel? Sarah considered this seriously. No, she said finally. Not now. Maybe someday when Daniel is old enough to decide for himself if he wants to know his father. But right now, Raymond is dealing with the consequences of his choices, and Daniel is happy, healthy, and loved. That's what matters. She paused, then added, Besides, I've built something real. A life, a business, a family of my own choosing. I don't need Raymond's validation or his money. I never did. I just needed to believe in myself. Maya reached across the table and squeezed her friend's hand. You're richer than Raymond ever was, she said. You know that, right? In all the ways that matter. Sarah smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Yeah, she said. I think I do know that now. 3 months later, Maya was working the afternoon shift when a woman came into the cafe. She was elegantly dressed, her face carefully made up, but there was something defeated in her posture. Maya seated her at a table by the window and brought her a menu. Can I start you with something to drink? Just water, please, the woman said. Her voice was tired. Maya returned with the water and took her order. As she walked away, she heard the woman's phone ring. Hello? Yes, I know, I've already spoken to the lawyer. Raymond, I don't want to discuss this here. No, I've made my decision. The divorce papers will be filed next week. Malcolm felt a jolt of recognition. Jennifer Lee now, Jennifer Chen, Raymond's wife. She kept her professional distance, serving Jennifer her lunch, refilling her water. When Jennifer requested the check, Maya brought it promptly. Jennifer paid in cash and left a generous tip, $30 on a $40 lunch. As she gathered her things to leave, she caught Maya's eye. Thank you for your service, she said, and there was genuine warmth in her voice. You're very good at what you do. Thank you, ma'am, Maya replied. I hope your day gets better. Jennifer gave her a sad smile. It will. I'm leaving my husband. Finally doing what I should have done years ago. It turns out all his money couldn't buy happiness, or loyalty, or love. It couldn't even buy honesty. Maya didn't know what to say, but Jennifer didn't seem to expect a response. She simply walked out, leaving Maya standing with the generous tip in her hand. That evening, Maya told Sarah about the encounter. So it's all falling apart for him, Sarah said. She was feeding Daniel dinner, and Marcus was there too, playing with Lily in the living room. Does it give you any satisfaction? Maya asked. Sarah thought about it. No, she said finally. I don't take pleasure in anyone's pain, but it does reinforce something I've learned. That building your life on shallow foundations on money and status, and connections instead of love and integrity, and real values, means everything can collapse in an instant. She looked at Marcus playing with the children, and her expression softened. I have something real now. We have something real. That can't be taken away by a financial scandal, or a failed business deal. That's the difference. 2 years after that, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, Maya and Sarah took their children to the park. Daniel was 4 now, Lily 3. They ran and played while Maya and Sarah sat on a bench, watching them with that particular mix of vigilance and contentment that all parents know. I've been thinking, Sarah said, about writing my story down. Not to publish or anything, just to have it, so Daniel can read it someday when he's older. That's a good idea, Maya encouraged. I want him to understand that his father wasn't a villain, just a weak man who made bad choices, and I want him to know that those choices don't define who Daniel is or what he can become. He's lucky to have you as his mother, Maya said. Sarah smiled. We're all lucky. You, me, our kids. We've built something real out of almost nothing. That's success, isn't it? Not money or status, but this. She gestured to their children playing, to their friendship, to the life they'd created. Yeah, Maya agreed. This is success. In that moment, on that ordinary park bench, watching their children play in the sunshine, both women understood something profound, that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or social status, but in love freely given, in integrity maintained under pressure, in the courage to build something real rather than accepting something hollow. Raymond Chen, wherever he was now, might still have money or he might not. It didn't matter, because he'd lost something far more valuable than financial wealth. He'd lost the chance to know his son, to be part of something genuine, to build a legacy that mattered. Sarah had the life he'd thrown away, and she'd built it better than he ever could have imagined. That was the truest form of success, not proving anything to the person who'd wronged you, but simply building a life so full and real that their absence becomes irrelevant. Moral of the story: money can buy comfort, privilege, and temporary pleasure, but it cannot purchase character, integrity, or genuine human connection. When we choose wealth and status over love and principle, we may gain material success, but lose something far more valuable: our humanity, our relationships, and the opportunity to build a meaningful legacy. True richness lies not in what we possess, but in who we are and how we treat others, especially those society tells us are beneath us. The waitress serving your coffee, the single mother struggling to make ends meet. These people possess a dignity and worth that no amount of money can diminish, and that no rudeness can erase. In the end, the things that matter most, love, respect, integrity, family, cannot be bought or sold. They can only be earned through consistent character and genuine care for others. Those who understand this are wealthy beyond measure, regardless of their bank balance. Those who don't remain poor in spirit, no matter how much money they accumulate. The boy who left Sarah pregnant chose temporary wealth over lasting value, and in doing so, he lost everything that truly mattered. While Sarah, through her strength and grace, built a life richer than any amount of money could provide.